John, thank you very much indeed for joining us. I suppose my first question is, what do you make of this strategy? It's a lot of money, and to be fair to the government, they're pretty clear that they are committed to tackling homelessness.
Yeah, I think the government is committed. I think it's put a lot of money in, and it's shown that there is the real resolve to carry out what they said they were going to do in their manifesto. I do think we also ought to bear in mind that over the decades, certainly since the days of the foundation of the Big Issue, there have been many government initiatives. And under Tony Blair, they managed to get rid of almost most rough sleeping. And they really did, through the Rough Sleepers Initiative, managed to get people housed and moved on. So we've got almost a kind of golden period that was probably 25, 30 years ago. And in comparison to today, we seem to have many more problems. We have people coming from other countries seeking help. We have people who are having problems with their housing benefit because the government has kept the costs down. We have a lack of social housing. We also have what I think is the most lacking, and I've been telling every government this for the last 34 years, and that is, where is the future? Where is the prevention? We keep dealing with the emergency, and because we keep dealing with the emergency, we will always have an emergency.
Isn't that the point, though?
Sorry?
Yeah, I'm just saying, isn't that the point, though, John? And you're right, this is a problem that's getting worse. I think it's up 8% under Labour. And I get about tackling the underlying causes of this, but they are so complex that, in all honesty, is any government going to be able to prevent lots of the reasons that lead to homelessness?
Well, I think that's a bit of an excuse, because you see, if you look at the figures and you look at the people who are falling into homelessness, a lot of them are people who have come from limited education opportunities. They come from poverty. They've inherited poverty from their families, and they therefore are on the back foot at the very beginning of life. And then they get on with their lives. They have a family and themselves, and then they find that, you know, some reversal happens in their lives, and they fall into long-term unemployment. They fall into homelessness. And I think the thing is that everybody always says it's so complex, but actually, if you make the investment in the early stages of people's lives, if you make an investment in the children and in the parents to get them so that they don't pass the poverty on to the next generation. I know all about this because I inherited poverty, and it took me decades to get out of the trouble of inherited poverty.
Andy Burnham today suggesting that the government in some ways is making this situation worse. I know they've frozen housing allowance, for example. He's suggesting we should go back to the COVID initiative, and, you know, homelessness is not just people who are living in temporary accommodation, as you rightly pointed out, it's people sleeping on the streets, that he should bring back everyone in, this idea that the state should provide accommodation, particularly for rough sleepers, all of the time. Is that possible?
Well, I would like the government to get behind the initiatives that are happening now to take over empty properties. I've been told that there's between 600,000 and 800,000 empty properties in the UK. So if you actually started to use that, but then you would have to start, the government would have to say, OK, we're going to do very, very draconian things. We're going to take over property, Ministry of Defence property, local authority property, and we're going to use the spaces above offices, the spaces above shops, all these wonderful initiatives that helped solve the problem 25 years ago.
Yeah, and you know, there's even pressure on that stock as we speak. Just very finally and briefly, John, if you can, you know, we're in the Christmas periods, and homelessness feels particularly stark at this time of the year, particularly rough sleeping. Minister's saying today that you shouldn't give money directly to homeless people. What's your advice around that?
I think it's entirely up to the person who is making that decision. It's their money. They can spend it the way they want. I always believe that if we put our money into the organisations who are getting people off the streets. People like Crisis, people like The Big Issue, people like St Mungo's, I think it would be money best spent. But the public have a right to make a decision what they do with their money. And I would never balk at anybody. What they're trying to do is demonstrate their humanity. It may not actually get the person off the streets, but at a time like this, I think we should be thinking of their everyday humanity, the pressing crisis that they're in while on the streets.